What if I told you that Tyler Perry felt deceived by the man who helped him create his billion-dollar empire? Yes, the well-known comedian, actor, and gospel singer, David Mann, who you may recognize from stage productions and motion pictures, has now spoken up. He claims that Tyler Perry took advantage of him, but why now? And what sinister reality has long been concealed? Stay with me, because what we're going to reveal will forever alter your perception of Tyler Perry and David Mann. In Tyler Perry's productions, David Mann has long been regarded as one of the most devoted and engaging characters. He contributed to Tyler Perry's vision in ways that viewers could relate to for decades. From portraying the funny character Mr. Brown to bringing his gospel background and comedic timing to the stage. However, startling allegations are now coming to light that present a completely different picture of their relationship in private. What actually transpired between Tyler Perry and David Mann? Were friendship and trust the foundation of their partnership? Or was David Mann just another gifted person sucked into Perry's multi-billion-dollar business? And why, after years of silence, is David Mann now speaking out? We're delving deeply into the hidden scandal in this video, examining the little-known tale of Tyler Perry and David Mann's collaboration. You'll learn about the highs, the lows, and the times when it was hard to ignore the reality. This is beyond Hollywood drama. It has to do with power, loyalty, and the true cost of celebrity. You won't have the same perspective on either man after watching this film, I promise. Because behind closed doors, another story was being told while the cameras were filming and the crowds were laughing. Let's start with the commencement of their voyage before delving into the startling specifics. The origin of David Mann and Tyler Perry's relationship and the reasons it was thought to be unbreakable. We must start at the beginning in order to comprehend the tension and controversy surrounding David Mann's recent discoveries. Tyler Perry was a struggling playwright who was working hard to get people into theaters long before he rose to prominence in Hollywood. He had the idea and the scripts, but he needed the right talent to make those characters come to life in a way that audiences would remember. David Mann came into play at that point. David Mann and his spouse, Tamila Mann, were already well known in the entertainment and gospel industries. Due to their gospel music roots, they sang with Kirk Franklin, and the family the pair gained notoriety and a loyal following. Together with Tamila's powerful vocals, David's humorous timing and exuberant demeanor make them a unique partnership. They were a match made in heaven when Tyler Perry found them. Initially, at least. David Mann was chosen by Perry to play Mr. Brown, a peculiar, boisterous, and even absurd figure who quickly won over fans. Mr. Brown became the comic relief that spectators anticipated in Perry's productions because of his mismatched outfits, outrageous demeanor, and humorous one-liners. Not to mention that Mr. Brown wasn't only a supporting role. He was a pillar of the media landscape. Many contend that the plays and even the early movies would not have had the same effect if David Mann hadn't played them. The audiences adored it. After being praised by critics, Tyler Perry's shows quickly sold out theaters all over the nation. The combination of David Mann's remarkable performance and Perry's writing and direction was electrifying. At the time, it appeared that the two men had formed a relationship based on trust and loyalty in addition to their working collaboration. However, this is where the narrative starts to take an intriguing turn. Questions began to surface despite David Mann's assistance in building Perry's brand and audience. Did David really receive the credit and benefits he was due for his contribution to Perry's success? Was there an imbalance of power behind the standing ovations and laughter? One that would subsequently be revealed in startling ways? Because although the initial stages appeared to be a collaboration straight out of a fairy tale, things weren't always as they seemed. And the weaknesses in their collaboration become apparent as we learn more about what was going on behind the scenes. However, we must examine the turning point before delving into the disputes and scandals. The point at which Tyler Perry's career took off and his relationship with David Mann started to change in unexpected ways. Few could have expected the explosive growth of Tyler Perry's career as the late 1990s gave way to the early 2000s. What began as modest stage productions with a gospel influence that were presented in local theaters abruptly expanded into a traveling empire that packed arenas all across the nation. For hours, people waited in line to see Medea Cora and, of course, the always memorable Mr. Brown. The actors that brought Perry's characters to life were the main reason for the success. David Mann was in the middle of it all. Each time Mr. Brown, with his ill-fitting attire and inflated facial expressions, took the stage, the crowd burst out laughing. His relationship with Tamila Mann, who frequently portrayed Mr. Brown's daughter Cora, produced a genuine, family-like vibe that viewers adored. This was no longer only theater. It was evolving into a trend in culture. However, this is when things began to change. Perry's brand expanded along with his name. The emphasis shifted from the ensemble cast that laid the groundwork to Tyler Perry as the driving force behind the success. Television commercials, DVDs, and billboards all bore his name, instead of emphasizing the actors who had been carrying these plays night after night. The story turned into a Tyler Perry presentation. This caused a silent stress for David Mann. On the one hand, he was appreciative of the chance, the publicity, and the ability to use Perry's platform to advance his career. However, a growing question was raised. Was he being fairly compensated for his contribution to Perry's business, both monetarily and publicly? The power dynamic became evident at this point. Tyler Perry was no longer merely a playwright. He was turning into a household name and a separate industry. Additionally, in Hollywood, it frequently puts the supporting cast in precarious situations when one person controls all the money, creative control, and decision-making authority. At the top, decisions are made about contracts, salaries, and credits. Perry was at the top too. Loyal and committed, David Mann continued to produce, keep showing up, and keep making people laugh. However, Perry continued to be the center of attention as the movies Diary of a Mad Black Woman, Medea's Family Reunion, and Meet the Browns came out. Fans adored Mr. despite the fact that his efforts were frequently presented as incidental. Brown, but Perry's brilliance, not Mann's skill, was consistently cited in the industry narrative as the reason for that achievement. And this is the point at which animosity subtly started to grow. Imagine feeling like a piece on someone else's chessboard, contributing to the creation of a billion-dollar business, and bringing a character to life in a manner that no one else could. Eventually, David Mann started to confront that fact. Nevertheless, Perry's empire was growing at this time. Movies, TV series, and a studio that would grow to be among the biggest in the nation. In the eyes of the media, everyone around Perry appeared to get smaller as he grew larger, and those who worked closely with him started to observe the imbalance more clearly, even though fans might not have noticed at the time. The portion that truly raises eyebrows, though, is this. Some of the same people who helped Tyler Perry become a billionaire were having difficulties behind the scenes while his career took off. It wasn't only David Mann. After Perry no longer required them in the same manner, other cast members would subsequently come up with their own accounts of being underpaid, ignored, or marginalized. The full story then starts to take shape, because there is a deeper wound when someone like David Mann, who has always been renowned for his devotion, humility, and dedication to family values, begins to speak out. Tyler Perry's ascent was more than just a tale of achievement. It was a tale of relationships that would never be the same again, of shifting power, and of silent sacrifices. The most important question, however, is still open. What specifically transpired that caused David to feel taken advantage of? And why did he choose this moment to finally speak up? Following years of devotion and quiet, David Mann continued to say nothing for years. He continued portraying Mr. Brown, appearing on sets, and giving interviews in which he grinned and giggled about the role that made him famous. Everything appeared flawless to the general population. Loyalty was exemplified by the director and actor team of Tyler Perry and David Mann, who had produced iconic cultural moments. But struggle is often hidden by quiet. Questions were simmering behind closed doors regarding care, acknowledgement, and recompense. Fans may believe that David Mann, who starred in numerous stage productions, movies, and even television spin-offs, was enjoying life to the fullest and enjoying the benefits of celebrity. However, the reality is that Mann and many other actors in Perry's shows were frequently forced into contracts that undervalued them. It took some time for David Mann to reach his breaking point. Over time, it accumulated. The wound deepened every time Perry's name was extolled and Mann's contribution was disregarded. It hurt a bit more every time Perry's billion-dollar empire was emphasized by the media without giving credit to the artists who carried the productions. And every time Perry's personal achievements garnered media attention while his co-stars allegedly battled to be treated fairly, Mann saw how out of balance the relationship had become. David's words were therefore profound when he eventually spoke out. In interviews and discussions, the man acknowledged feeling taken advantage of, used for his skill, his time, his devotion, and his brilliant sense of humor. What he believed to be a partnership based on respect for one another and achievement together felt more and more one-sided. Perry received the respect of the industry, the celebrity, and the money. However, Mann was left with a beloved figure who had few chances to grow outside of Perry's brand. Take a moment to consider that. Imagine giving your all to a part and making it something that audiences loved, only to discover later that all of that effort was supporting someone else's business while your own career was still limited. That was precisely the situation David Mann was in. This is where things become even more intriguing, though. David Mann was talking about more than himself. What other actors had alluded to for years was reflected in his statements. In the past, actors like Taraji P. Henson, Monique, and Jill Scott had voiced their concerns about unfair treatment and unequal compensation in Hollywood. Some are even making subtle references to Tyler Perry's production methods. The idea that Perry's empire was based on the sacrifices of people who stood by him as well as on inventiveness was strengthened by David Mann's statement. He used me, a man stated, and it wasn't merely a grievance. It was enlightening. It was an acknowledgement that loyalty can occasionally be confused with weakness. It is possible to abuse that trust, and that unpleasant realities can be concealed in even the most fruitful collaborations. And because David Mann was more than just an actor, this turning point is significant. Perry's audience considered him family. Fans adored Mr. Brown, his chemistry with Tamila Mann, and the joy he gave to both theaters and homes. Fans' perceptions of Tyler Perry as a guy and a creator are so rocked when someone like Guy feels deceived. Tyler Perry hasn't specifically addressed these allegations, of course, but the silence itself begs the question. Why hasn't Perry openly defended himself or explained what actually transpired behind the scenes if David Mann feels like he was taken advantage of? Is it because confronting it would expose his treatment of his actors and crew to much greater scrutiny? Or is Perry's belief that his empire is unassailable the reason, regardless of who raises their voice? In any case, Mann's choice to speak up marked a sea change. It demonstrated that the truth always comes out, regardless of how strong Perry's brand may be. And David Mann, the man who used to light up the stage with nothing but laughter and joy, now revealed a somber truth. Hollywood success frequently has unintended consequences. And occasionally, the same individuals who initially contributed to the establishment of the empire bear those expenses. This is when the plot really takes off, though. The revelations of Mann are not limited to his personal experience. They give rise to a far more significant query. How many others receive the same treatment if Tyler Perry could employ someone as devoted and important as David Mann? How much of Perry's success may be attributed to those who were never given the praise or money they deserved? The revelations made by David Mann were not isolated. After he finally spoke, many fans started to make connections, recalling previous performers who had alluded to or openly acknowledged similar difficulties in Tyler Perry's plays. And as you begin to piece these tales together, an unsettling pattern emerges. Let's go back in time a bit. Tyler Perry's career took off, and his shows became mainstays of the black entertainment industry. Working with Perry was viewed by many actors as a boon, an opportunity to show off their skills to audiences who would not have otherwise recognized them. However, some cast members started to wonder if Perry's success came at their expense as his empire increased. The Academy Award-winning actress Monique was among the most well-known examples. Monique publicly denounced Perry, Oprah Winfrey, and Lee Daniels for what she called unfair treatment and blackballing. Although she had more problems than just Perry, the fact that she listed him among them caused admirers to reevaluate his treatment of his coworkers. Money wasn't the only thing that upset her. She was drawing attention to an exploitative culture in which actors were coerced into remaining silent in order to preserve the brand. There was Taraji P. Henson after that. She has publicly discussed the persistent pay gap that black women in Hollywood experience, frequently receiving a small portion of what their white counterparts receive, even if she did not specifically accuse Perry of misconduct. She disclosed in interviews that there were times when she had to struggle to get paid fairly. Even though she was the focus of Perry's acrimony, there were still concerns about whether someone of her caliber received the proper salary. Even Grammy-winning singer and actress Jill Scott spoke to challenges in the entertainment business while collaborating with influential producers. Although she never specifically mentioned Perry by name, those who had followed Perry's history of maintaining strict control over his movies found her remarks about being disregarded and underappreciated in Hollywood to be accurate. Furthermore, it doesn't end there. One of the biggest studios in the nation, Tyler Perry's, is frequently hailed as a success and a representation of black brilliance in Hollywood. Insiders have, however, spoken of rigorous creative control, grueling hours, and low compensation behind the gloss and glamour. Although the chance to work on Perry's sets was beneficial for their resumes, some crew members have discreetly acknowledged that the working conditions weren't always perfect. The narrative of David Mann becomes even more poignant at this point. What does that say for the dozens of people who came and went without the same dedication or prominence if a man like Perry, who had been there from the start and contributed to the initial basis of Perry's success, might feel taken advantage of? Were they only stepping stones to Perry becoming a billionaire, or were they replaceable to his empire? In actuality, such trends are not uncommon in Hollywood. Actors who never receive a fair compensation for their labor are the foundation of many wealthy producers' and directors' empires. However, Tyler Perry's case is different because his brand is centered around community, faith, loyalty, and family. His tales advocate for love, forgiveness, and healing. However, some of the very people who contributed to the telling of those stories felt ignored, underpaid, or insulted behind the scenes. It becomes even more contentious at this point. Perry has frequently justified his decisions by saying that he hires and develops black talent, providing possibilities that mainstream Hollywood would never provide. Indeed, that aspect is accurate. Unquestionably, he has given hundreds of performers and crew personnel jobs that they could not have otherwise had in traditional Hollywood. However, offering opportunities and treating people fairly are two different things. Furthermore, it implies that there were conditions tied to the opportunity when individuals like David Mann claim they were used, strings that were considerably more advantageous to Perry than to others around him. We are forced to consider some difficult concerns by this broader pattern. Does Perry really support Black Hollywood? Or has he become an expert at manipulating the story while covertly taking advantage of those who assisted him in creating it? When those around you feel marginalized or silenced, can you honestly call it uplifting? And keep in mind that this is more than conjecture. Fans have begun to re-examine previous interviews, make connections between old issues, and take a new look at Perry's empire. A darker reality is challenging Tyler Perry's slick image as the man who gave black actors a stage all by himself. One where celebrity came at a price, loyalty was put to the test, and trust was betrayed. But the most eerie question of all is still unanswered. Why now? Why did David Mann ultimately choose to reveal the truth after decades of devotion? What prompted him to reveal the truth about his life or his relationship with Perry? David Mann was the epitome of commitment for years. The man stood behind Tyler Perry no matter how large he got, retaliating against Mr. Brown in movies, TV series, and even live performances. Like the humorous anchor who viewers could always rely on, he was a ubiquitous figure in Perry's world. Why now then, is the obvious question. Why would David Mann finally speak up after decades of allegiance and silence? As it happens, the answer isn't straightforward. It's complex, intimate, and connected to both work and family. Let's start by talking about David's career. Despite Perry's business growing into film studios, motion pictures, and billion-dollar transactions, Mann's career was still mostly tied to the Mr. Brown figure. He was made renowned by the part, but it also typecast him. Hollywood had already confined him to a single persona, so the studio didn't approach him with offers for dramatic parts or new projects. Audiences chuckled at the silly character who wore mismatched suits. And that's when the frustration started to accumulate. Imagine spending decades of your life in a single position only to discover that the same thing that brought you fame is also preventing you from moving forward. David Mann could have done so much more, but there was little opportunity for him to grow in Perry's empire. He was always Mr. Brown when he was on screen. Yes, fans adored it, but to Mann, it was a prison masquerading as a boon. There were also the financial issues to consider. Tyler Perry made it to the billion-dollar mark. He earned headlines as one of the richest men in Hollywood, bought expansive properties, and established one of the biggest film studios in the nation. How much of that, however, affected the actors who assisted him in creating that empire? Things become hazy at that point. The man claimed to feel taken advantage of, and just that term implies that he felt his pay and recognition were insufficient for the contribution he made to Perry's success. However, there is more to this narrative than just career and wealth. Family, authenticity, gospel music, and faith have always been the cornerstones of David Mann's and his wife Tamila Mann's lives. They're not socialites from Hollywood. Their family and their ideals serve as their pillars. David has expressed over the years his desire to set a good example for his kids and grandkids by teaching them honesty, integrity, and the need of standing up for what's right. Therefore, it wasn't just about him when he ultimately made the decision to come out about Perry. It was about making a truthful legacy. According to reports, the man got to the point where being silent felt like complicity. It was no longer acceptable to him to keep smiling for the cameras while harboring hidden grudges. In many respects, speaking up was a liberating act. After serving as Perry's empire's comic voice for years, it was his method of taking back his voice. This is something that a lot of fans fail to notice. Time. David Mann is currently in his 50s. At this point in his life, reputation and legacy are more important than immediate financial gain. The urge to share your tale and your whole truth grows stronger as you age. Mann probably understood that his narrative would only ever be presented from the perspective of Tyler Perry's empire if he didn't speak immediately. The changing discourse in Hollywood may also be a contributing element. An increasing number of actors have come forward in recent years to reveal exploitation, unfair treatment, and inequality. Silence is no longer the norm in this environment due to the Me Too movement, discussions about wage inequality, and the increasing call for openness. Mann's choice to speak up is consistent with a broader cultural trend in which actors, regardless of the producer's level of influence, are refusing to keep quiet about exploitation. Therefore, David Mann's eventual quiet was more than just an outburst of annoyance. It has to do with justice, heritage, and truth. It was to demonstrate to his family and admirers that he was more than Mr. Brown is more than just Perry's henchman. He dedicated decades of his life to a collaboration that, in his opinion, did not recognize his value. This is when the discovery becomes even more potent. David Mann revealed more than simply his own story. Inadvertently, he encouraged other actors to think twice before remaining silent. His remarks sparked a discussion that Hollywood has long attempted to suppress. A discussion about the pitfalls of one-sided relationships, the hidden costs of loyalty, and the exploitation that frequently lurks beneath the glitzy exterior of success. The tale doesn't stop there, though. because fans began asking a terrifying question when David Mann's truth was made public. What else has Tyler Perry concealed if he could do this to someone he regarded as family? More significantly, will his empire endure when the individuals who created it begin to criticize him?